We've seen a record number of layoffs in the games industry this year. It's not only bad for the talented people behind your favorite games, but also bad for you. Let's talk about it. In 2023, an estimated 6,000 jobs in the video game industry across all platforms and all companies were lost. We haven't gotten out of this year's first fiscal quarter, and an estimated 8,100 industry pros have been let go. Pros at companies like Electronic Arts, which announced they would be laying off at least 5% of their current workforce. Microsoft, who axed 1,900 employees across Xbox, ABK, and ZeniMax. And even smaller teams are getting hit, like Airship Syndicate, who announced they'd be letting their team members go as well. This could be indicating a general downward trend for the industry as a whole. Some people are even speculating a potential video game crash. So let's take a second and talk about the potential causes of this trend and how it not only impacts the talented people behind your favorite games, but you as a customer. First is that games are a risky business, right? They are products that require a lot of time, infrastructure, and money to produce. This means top brass and exec boards will do anything in their power to keep investors happy.
Unfortunately, one of the best ways to make yourself look profitable is by cutting your budget. That means cutting labor costs.
Yeah, the only terrible thing about that, though, is that it also reflects really badly on your business to everyone else outside of the boardroom. So here's the thing. While stocks have been pretty consistent across the board for a lot of these companies, companies like EA and Sony have seen some pretty sharp drops. Back on February 29th, to be exact, you can see both of them have just this sharp ass arrow straight down in comparison to their usual numbers. And it wouldn't be, super out of the norm to have a video game crash. We've seen a few, and we're coming to the end of like loot box era. So maybe it's just time for something to change.
Yeah. Day before last or so, something like that. February 29th wasn't very far ago.
I also just want to point out that games are longer investments, and sometimes the cost of an investment only to flop can ruin a studio or a publisher financially. It can not only mean just a loss in profit, but it also means stock prices, as you mentioned, can really drop, and that can scare skittish investors. So cutting team members, decreasing your budget, and maximizing your profit is really appealing to a lot of these companies who have to keep investors happy. Now, that has a lot of consequences, including leading to smaller teams who have to keep pace with the current industry expectations, leading to more practices like crunch and impacting the quality of the games that hit stores. This also means that when games get released with game-breaking issues, it will take longer to be resolved. So that's really the first issue that these layoffs are going to have for customers. Small, overworked teams who have to maintain scale and scope of these properties will inevitably not be able to produce products at the quality you are expecting them to be, and you'll be still paying the same price. The second reason we're seeing this trend is consolidation of the industry. There's two really good examples of this. Embracer and Microsoft are the two biggest contributors to this problem.
Microsoft just completed the biggest ever acquisition of another company with ABK. They literally broke their own record from when they bought ZeniMax, which included Bethesda and other smaller studios like Machine Games. A lot of these properties also have a high likelihood of not seeing the light of day for years, perhaps even decades. Some will never be touched again. Fighting for IP rights or tracking them down is a Herculean task. Look no further than Disco Elysium and Zaum.
And Sweden's Embracer Group has acquired something in the neighborhood of like 120 studios and holds the rights to 850 properties.
Yeah, and Embracer is a great example of how this impacts the AA space, as they've shut down teams behind medium-sized games like Insurgency Sandstorm. One of the first things companies will do when they have big acquisitions is to cut team members, for many of the same reasons that we see above. It also just generally shrinks the job market, and we can look outside of gaming to other industries that have been consolidated, right? Terrestrial radio and local newspapers are really good examples of how consolidation is bad for customers. In radio, syndication and mass programming has led radio to being less local and less personal to listeners in their respective markets. In newspapers, fewer reporters are available to report on very local issues, meaning that news websites will just run newswires and puff pieces about national gossip. Similarly, in games, we're going to be getting less variety from teams who have less control over their products. And if you have any moral issue with certain companies, like we do with Ubisoft, you may end up having even less options. So, second point in summary, consolidation is pretty much bad for everybody. And the third point we want to mention that is wrapped up in both the previous points, we may never get to see some of our favorite franchises get new games. When the teams behind certain franchises get laid off, when certain franchises are not considered profitable by investor groups, and when studios are closed, we'll have less IP. When Embracer Group acquired Eidos Montreal, all hope for another Deus Ex game was pretty much lost.
Along with a portion of my sanity, to be said in short. But, Sony shut down Japan Studio 3 years ago. Okay. That might seem like doesn't necessarily fit in the conversation today, but not alone. Sony has shut down 4 studios in the past 4 years. Japan Studio is a studio that would have 30 years of game industry legacy this year if it was still around. They had hands in the creation of Wild Arms, Dark Cloud, Parappa the Rapper, Ico, Shadow of the Colossus, Ape Escape, Legend of Dragoon, Demon Souls, Bloodborne, Ghost of Tsushima. Dude, the list is massive. It's dense. It's full of some of the biggest splashes in gaming history. Others are huge pieces of history or nostalgia for individual people. You can't deny that the impact of some of these games had on the gaming industry. It's ripples. It's huge. Yet it wasn't enough to save them from the headsman's axe, straight to the chopping block. Then the teams just got mixed up and blended into other groups that all fall under the umbrella of SIE. And while it's not shocking to say that we'll likely never see a Parappa the Rapper game or like Knack, it's pretty disheartening to think that a lot of creative minds just, got shuffled around or completely tossed out with the bathwater, even after performing exceptionally well. And like I said at the top, Japan Studio is one of 4 studios that Sony has axed in the past 4 years. This year, they axed in its entirety London Studio, which almost solely made games for all of Sony's periphery equipment. They had been focusing on the PSVR, and they didn't really do exceptionally well by any means. So it's not that much of a surprise. But there were about 200 people that worked over at London Studio, and they were working apparently on an unannounced online co-op combat game, according to an article from the BBC. Overall, London Studio makes up about a third of the total layoffs that Sony has announced, the final number being about 900 employees, which is roughly about 8% of their global team, which adds up to a lot of creativity that they've just flushed
down the drain. My biggest example in the gaming space is EA, which has recently released a statement via their CEO, Andrew Wilson, after laying off over 670 employees. That they will be moving away from future licensed IPs. Wilson stated, "This greater focus allows us to drive creativity, accelerate innovation, and double down on our biggest opportunities, including our own IP, sports, and massive online communities, to deliver the entertainment players want today and tomorrow. Lastly, we are streamlining our company operations to deliver deeper, more connected experiences for fans everywhere that build community, shape culture, and grow fandom." End quote. To me, that is purely a cop-out. COVID gave these larger companies many breaks, giving them the freedom to keep people employed. And now that post-COVID, we see that being taken away. Maybe they got too comfortable saying, quote, record profits this quarter, every quarter. Now that they're seeing an averaging out, or in this case, a dip, with the other company as well, they see the dollar signs leaving their eyes. It's starting to impact the top dollar. They state that they want to focus on what they currently own and want to stay in that MMO type area. But what they have currently is super, super stale. How do you expect to continue growing if you stifle any ideas of new IPs? I'm also just super salty about the Star Wars Bounty Hunter game that got canceled, which is the second second time we were promised a good FPS bounty hunter game for it just to get canned. And I'm looking at Project 1313 here. But the sad part is that though that that there are dev teams that are truly struggling to keep afloat. And unfortunately, it may have to result in layoffs and or closures. But these franchise-driven publishing companies are fighting tooth and nail just to keep stacking more and more money in their upper management's pocket, and it's just super gross. It's not a great time.
Yeah, I totally feel you there. There was something that I had forgotten to mention, but it should be important to note. And I wish I had the source right now, but right now a lot of people are also speculating that, and you brought it up partially, the money that they earned during COVID, there were also business loans that they were able to take out that were interest free, and that has also ended.
Oh yeah.
So
yeah.
A lot of these loans are also now like, hey man, you owe us da 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 da, or if you need more loans, you're going to have to also cough up on the interest rate. So a lot of things are shifting on their heel, and now they're going to have to try and come up with that. What sucks is that they're, instead of choosing to invest more in projects that could pay up and pay off later, they're instead saying, we need money now, we need to liquidate, and they choose to liquidate the people that raise them up and the creativity that actually brings gamers into a hobby that has a lot to offer, which is just mind-boggling.
It's very gross, and it really takes away from the other studios that are just small, 10 to 200 employees that are they're trying to make great games but are absolutely struggling to get through just because like time is tough, inflation's high. It's it's not a great time to be anyone, let alone a game dev. So
yeah,
it's tough.
To summarize, layoffs suck. They suck for the people who make the games. They suck for those people's families. They also suck for customers. The only people that really are helped by layoffs are the executive offices and investors, and rarely do they benefit anybody else. And if a company is laying off hundreds or thousands of team members but reporting record profits, maybe we remember that when we're ready to buy another game.
Kellogg's. Watching you, Kellogg's.
Let us know your thoughts in the comments and subscribe for more videos just like this one. Until next time, stay safe, stay healthy, keep fighting the good fights, and we'll see you in the next video.